Alright guys, I am back for one more match today. I have a lot of work to do for my grad school stuff, but you know what? I'm gonna truck along here so that I can put out this content for you guys. If you like it, if you learn something from it or enjoy it, whatever it is that you take from this, leave a like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff. I'm not gonna say any more about it. Let's just jump straight in here for round 3, where hopefully we can secure this 2-1. I just now realized that our previous opponent's username was Idea. Idea 90. Interesting. Alright, we are in here for the match. Maybe we can be on the play again? Or is that asking too much? We'll find out. Oh, on the draw. Playing as Mr. Dr. G's. We have a turn to explore here, which I happen to personally very much enjoy. We got some bounce lands here to go along with an Azusa. Wish this was the other pack that we happen to play, but that's fine. I think it's a reasonable keep. Might be a tad slow, but I mean, we're playing all of our spells on curve. Turn 2 Explore, turn 3 Azusa. So that ain't too bad. Opponent mulliganing to 6. Of course, this Explorer doing a little more in this list than it usually does. This Explorer would enable us to play a turn 3 Karn if we drew it. Bloodstainmire pass? It's a little suspect. Not sure what deck would be playing Bloodstainmire and not playing any 1-drops. Or perhaps they just failed to draw a 1-drop. We'll play our Valakut and pass back. Of course, Valakut working very nicely with our Dryad that we freshly drew off the top. If we find a couple more lands here, then we'll have a threat already kind of self-assembled, if you will. Fetch Shock a Grave, I'm expecting a Thought Scour targeting themselves. Could indicate Grixis Shadow. Yep. Called it. Although, to be honest, it was pretty obvious from that point, but regardless. The fact that they haven't played a Thoughtseize or something along those lines yet is quite nice for us. Although, be careful what you say, because it might come back to bite you. We might be getting double discarded this turn. That would make sense to me. Especially if our opponent kept a hand that had a Fatal Push and they didn't fear a 1-mana creature from a Prowess strategy or something. I could see them having prioritized Scouring on turn 1. So, we're going to lose probably our Explorer here. I think that's the best card that we have. If our opponent wants to, they can take a Dryad, but I do think the Explorer is the take here, personally. That's not going to stop us from casting one of these 3-drops on turn 2, though. Looks like our opponent opted for the Dryad. I'm happy about that, unless, of course, they have an Inquisition or Thoughtseize that they're about to cast now. Death Shadow. That one's kind of a problem. Amulet. Interesting. So we can Amulet into Explorer. I like that. Let's leave our Growth Chamber in play here so that we can transmute a Talari West if we happen to draw one. The plan, of course, is to play this Breeding Pool out sooner rather than later. The Amulet is a fantastic draw here, allowing us to speed up the clock just a wee bit. We'll go ahead and play out the Valakut here so that we get a tap land out of the way. No reason to play this Breeding Pool, I think, at the moment. Now we just like to see a Titan off the top. We can even back it up with a Pact of Negation if it's a natural Primeval Titan and not a Summoner's Pact. Inquisition. Well, I mean, we still need a Titan, but we won't be able to cast it this upcoming turn. The Karn would still be a welcome top deck, although we might be a little short on time for getting in explosives and blowing it up on one. Not much that can be done about that, though. Dryad is an interesting one. Sadly, it doesn't really help us out of this situation very well, but at least it can block, so let's play out our Crumbling Vestige here. Suppose we could have held this one over the Breeding Pool so that we have a painless mana source here, but that's assuming that we draw a Titan to cast in the first place, and that we're not just dead to Temur Battle Rage and many other things, so I guess that's not the biggest of deals. Oh, almost past the turn. Not really what I'm trying to do here. I guess we keep the Gruul Turf in hand. So lets us pay for a Pact of Negation even if our Dryad dies as well, so that's nice. Definitely a very tight game here. If we can manage to top deck a Titan, thanks to the Valcut we already have in play, we'll just be able to kill them with Dryad plus Valcut. Of course, we could also haste a Titan and attack with it and all those other things. So I suppose a Titan, even without this Dryad in play, would still probably be good enough, but can we afford to block the Shadow? See, if we were playing the Boros Garrison Slayer Stronghold version, then our attacking Titan would be lethal just by itself. But I suppose we can get Talari West plus Battlements after playing Gruul Turf for turn, leave the Talari West untapped, and haste our Titan. That'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, so we'd be able to haste our Titan, leaving T-West untapped, and on the attack trigger, we would be able to transmute the T-West, but we wouldn't be able to do anything with it, really. Nah, I think we just have to fade our opponent killing us here, and not block, and then top deck a Titan. So that's the plan. If we happen to top deck a Talari West, if we are able to keep this Dryad in play, that means that we can successfully transmute and cast a Primeval Titan on the same turn as well. And we did not get punished here for choosing not to block, so that's nice. Alright, Titan off the top. One single time, Titan. That is not a Titan. Although we can trigger Dryad. Or trigger Valakut here, I guess I should say. We can attack them down to 5, but we're only going to get one Valakut trigger here, sadly. Suppose we could... I mean, we have to play out some lands here, so let's just go ahead and do that. Actually, no, we don't even get a Valakut trigger. Because we're going to still be at 5 lands in play after all this is said and done, so... So yeah, we're just chumping with Dryad most likely, and top decking a Titan yet again. That is the plan. And if our opponent wants to try to kill our Dryad, we can protect it with a Pact. And still be able to cast a Titan as well, although we wouldn't be able to transmute a Talari West if we had to. But we can pay 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and leave Gruul Turf up and have double Gruul Turf for 6 mana. Enough to get a Titan into play. Getting a Titan into play should be good enough. Although, now I'm thinking about it, since we do in fact have to block, there's absolutely no way that we can play 2 land drops this upcoming turn, so... Alright, Titan off the top. Titan off the top. Explorer. I'll take it. It's a redraw. We'll cast it. Titan. Bog not gonna do it. Alright. Let's go to game 2 here. So, Karn happens to be pretty weak against Stubborn Denial. So, for that reason, I'm inclined to side Karns out, interestingly enough. We can side Karns out and bring in Wormcoil and Explosives. Possibly Ballista. And that seems fine. I don't know. Yeah, I guess. I mean, Karn dodges Inquisition, though, similar to Primeval Titan. So it gives them additional things to worry about when it comes to Thoughtseize. And it lets us clear the way for a Summoner's Pact down the line, so we don't just get our Pact countered. We can trim a few Grazers. They do happen to block Death Shadow, which is nice and buying us a turn, but I guess I don't really like the prospect of going down a card in order to do so. It's not the worst, though. It also enables a turn 2 3-drop, which I'm happy with, so maybe not. I'm going to try leaving in the Grazers this time. We probably need some number of Dismembers, though. So we'll do this. We'll board out 1 Amulet, since they're poor top decks, and they are exposing us to Kulgan's Command. We'll board out Pact Negation, as it doesn't really do much if we aren't already with a threat to back up. So, Ghost Quarter could cut our opponent off of Temur Battle Rage, but that's about it. I often like to side out Radiant Fountain against them, since they'll be attacking us in large swings. We could just do this and make this our pivot and continue to lean on Karn. I don't know if that's going to be great or not, but I think having a maximum density of things that our opponent needs to Stubborn Denial is going to be nice. Would we want to bring in the Wormcoil engine anyways, though? I guess not. We'll run it like this. On the play. Don't quite have a turn 2 Explore here, although we're pretty threat heavy. There's a turn 3 Explore on the play fast enough. If we draw any untapped green source, which we have 2 basic forests, no, 1 basic forest, 2 snow forests, Windswept Heath, a Crumbling Vestige, and that's it. So we'd only have 5 hits out of 53 cards, which is pretty low odds, in all honesty. I guess we could also draw any of the 3 amulets, and that would help. If we draw a 3-drop, we can cast that instead on turn 3. I don't know, it's kind of rough. I'm gonna mulligan. I think we need something a little faster. This is a bit faster. Not by a whole lot, but it does let us hold up Dismember, which is nice. So we'll keep it. And I think I'm inclined to bottom the Grazer here. It does block, which is nice. We could also bottom the Dismember, actually. I don't know if I like the idea of that, though. Let's bottom the Hanweir and hope to draw land and Titan over the next couple draw steps, I think. Our opponent mulliganing it to 6 as well. I guess they're deciding whether their 6-card hand would be keepable, and they decide that it would be. We'll lead on Garenbrig here, so we can play out this Grazer sooner rather than later. I'm not planning on Ghost Quartering myself to play an Arboreal Grazer here. Our opponent has a turn 1 play here. Interesting. And they must not have a Bauble, considering they went ahead and fetched immediately, so if they play a Bauble in the upcoming turns, we can safely assume that they drew it. Thoughtseize on turn 1. Interesting. I feel like that's a little less effective than a Thoughtseize on turn, like, 2 or 3. In all honesty. The later you go with your Thoughtseize in this matchup, the more likely you are to hit the threat, and the more information you'll have as well. Suppose, I don't know if they would have taken an Explore here if they saw one, but maybe if they're thinking that they might take an Explore with the Thoughtseize, then Thoughtseizing now makes sense. They also have potentially nothing else to do with their mana, and they're just trying to get their life total low as quick as possible, so... Now Fetch Shock would allow them to cast a Shadow as a 1/1, which wouldn't be great against our Dismember now that they know about it, but they wouldn't know that necessarily just going into the game, so... Apparently, we've given our opponent a hard choice here. Of course, if our opponent manages to get a Shadow into play that can't be dismembered, we'll still have the upside of having prevented them from playing the Shadow earlier and doing some additional damage to us in combat steps here. So they take the Grazer. Intriguing. Suppose if we play our Growth Chamber, we're playing into a potential Damping Sphere, but I don't think that we can do much to play around it, so... Next turn we can play Ghost Quarter and Azusa, so... This is the line. If our opponent has Damping Sphere, well, then they got us, I guess, and we'll play Garenbrig, and things will be fine anyways, so... Inquisition. You got it. Well, our hand got significantly slower. And we drew a Primeval Titan, which is great news. I guess we're playing out the Garenbrig here. That way we can run into a basic forest or other untapped source here and be able to play Titan 2 turns from now by activating Garenbrig. We're holding up Dismember as well. Don't know how valuable that is at the moment, but our opponent's at exactly 13, so not enough to play a Shadow, even if they wanted to. Another Titan is actually a fine top deck, in my opinion. So, I guess we're just playing Ghost Quarter here, so that if we draw any untapped land, we'll be able to Titan, and otherwise we'll just play out our Growth Chamber and pick it up, so... Bobble. So, of course, they drew this. They are bobbling us. Wonder what they see. Tell us, opponent, is it an untapped land? It'd be funny if they just conceded here and we wouldn't necessarily know why. We could draw the top card, assuming MTGO would let us. That would be pretty funny, though. I don't expect that they would ever do that, but it would be funny. Alright, deck. Produce an untapped land. Untapped land. Untapped land. Ooh, Karn. Interesting. That one plays poorly into Stubborn Denial, but I'm not opposed to it. Do I want to play into Stubborn Denial or not? Considering we're just going to be slamming Titans from this turn after, I think that it's pretty free to do so. So, here goes. This could only be awkward if our opponent has exactly Thoughtseize plus Surgical Extraction, or double Thoughtseize, I suppose, but... Yep, they have the Denial. Not really concerned about it. We got more threats where that came from, so... I think in general, it would be best to wait on the Karn to play around Stubborn now there if we didn't have double Titan already in hand, but with our current setup, it's probably fine. Definitely runs some risk, but our opponent can play a 3/3 Shadow. Then they'll get us if they cycle double Street Wraith after we cast a Dismember. Thought Scour themselves. Hitting lands. I mean, they're probably pretty glad not to draw those lands. If they have another Street Wraith here and a Shadow, then I'm going to assume that they drew the Street Wraith, because there's no reason why they wouldn't have cycled Street Wraiths earlier than now, so... In other words, what I'm trying to say is if they play a shadow here, I probably will fire off a Dismember on their shadow, not playing around a potential Street Wraith. Here they could have Stubborn Denial for a Dismember. Ooh, double threat is kind of problematic here, considering we can't really make any efficient chump blockers at the moment. So let's fire off a Dismember at this Angler. I suppose the absolute worst case scenario is they have the backup Street Wraith and save their shadow, and then we have 2 threats that are clocking us, but I think we can handle 1 shadow, perhaps. So let's not use the green, though. If our opponent has the Stubborn Denial, then they don't necessarily know whether we have access to a Titan here or not. They might feel inclined to hold up the Stubborn Denial for a Summoner's Pact. Alright, they casted it. Alright, well, here's Titan. Unfortunately, it's not doing a whole lot at the moment, but it's okay. It does outclass this Gurmag Angler here, so I suppose we'd lose our Titan to blocking if they have a Kolaghan's Command, but not really worried about that. We could get Tolaria West and a Bounce Land here, and be able to transmute for an Engineered Explosives, which is not the worst. That also would disguise the fact that we have a second Titan already in hand. I don't mind that. We could also get a Bojuka Bog to prevent them playing a second Angler if they draw it. I kind of like that idea as well. So let's set up a Tolaria West for a future Titan trigger, and just make absolutely certain they don't get another Angler out on us, because I think that, or them drawing another Shadow, would be absolute worst case scenario, so let's just prevent that from happening as much as we can. If they get another Shadow in play, it's bad for us, but it's not the end of the world, considering we can pick up Tolaria West and Explosives on 1 and blow it up. And now they have used up 2 Stubborn Denials out of the 3 or 4 that they would potentially be playing. Suppose now we can't afford to lose our Titan. So, blocking this Gurmag Angler might be too much of a risk. I suppose if they have Temur Battle Rage and we don't block the Angler, then we die, though. And I think it's likely that we'll be able to pick up another Titan or Bounce Land off the top here anyway, so I think we have to snap off the block on this Angler, sadly, but... Or they just attack with a Shadow. Well, I'm definitely not blocking. They'd have to have Street Wraith into Temur Battle Rage for that to be lethal, so... Crumbling Vestige, you say? Do we start off with the Explorer, or do we just go straight for the attack? We can attack and get Valcut plus Bounce Land, pick up Tolaria West, transmute for a Dryad and play it, and then play Crumbling Vestige and Explorer, and hope to find a second land for lethal that way. Interesting. Well, they have to block here. So, I suppose... Let's see, if we explore and find another Titan, then we could Ghost Quarter ourselves and play another Titan, but not be able to haste and attack with it. So... Actually, we'd be able to play Vestige. So I guess our Titan ETB trigger would get Conrear plus a Bounce Land, and then we could play Vestige. So we do want to explore here first, just in case we top deck another Titan. It's not going to prevent us from transmuting T-West. Or will it? I think it will, actually. Let's see, if we don't hit a Titan or a land here... I guess doing this requires us to hit exactly Titan, or we can't get a Dryad into play. I guess we can use the Crumbling Vestige to make a blue to transmute, but then we don't get the Valcut trigger. I don't know if that's problematic or not, though. We could also just plan to get Field of the Dead and something else. I guess Field of the Dead plus Bounce Land, and then we can transmute and play and blow Explosives on 1 as well. Yeah, okay, I'm fine with that. So let's go ahead and explore here. Okay, Bounce Land is interesting. So now we can pick up and transmute the T-West right now. And not have to play our Vestige. I guess in doing so, we're forced to choose what we're transmuting for, though. No, actually, this is really bad because we can't trigger field on the attack here either, since the Simic Growth Chamber is similarly named. Oof, that's kind of a problem. Yeah, that might have been a huge mistake. I guess we could transmute 4 and cast a Summoner's Pact and cast Dryad right now and then attack and get Valakut. Yeah, let's do this. If our opponent has interaction for the Summoner's Pact, then this will be a little worse, but it also might just give us lethal immediately, so. Tricky situation here. So here's Dryad. We'll play it. And we can actually play out our Vestige immediately if the Dryad resolves, so that we can still trigger field, assuming that they have a way to kill the Dryad, so we're looking pretty good here. Alright, here's the Vestige. Just make a red for whatever it's worth. We'll go to combat. Swing. Now we get field and Valakut, and if they don't kill the Dryad, they're dead. And if they do kill the Dryad, we have zombie tokens to block. So this worked out well overall, I would say. Just send everything at them. Okay. that was tricky, but we got through it. Okay, do we want to board out Karns? We did see Karn get stubborn denied there, but it actually wasn't a huge problem, to be honest. It just traded with one of their cards, and if they didn't have the denial, then the Karn resolving would have put us in a great position. Maybe that's only because we had the Titans already as threats, but I do like having Karn here. I don't know if we want to board in Wormcoil, as it makes the Karn a little worse. Although Karn is most likely to get explosives or liquid metal coating perhaps here. So maybe we don't need a Wormcoil on the sideboard for it, but I mean, just being able to top deck Wormcoil as a threat is pretty nice, though. Maybe we bring in the Wormcoil and leave the rest as Karn targets, and we can board out one Grazer, although Grazer does block well, so I'm pretty happy about that. So lose an Azusa, perhaps? Nah, Azusa's too good. Let's get rid of a land. Let's get rid of the Ghost Quarter, I suppose. I don't mind that. We could get rid of the Cavern. I find it unlikely they're playing anything like Disdainful Stroke, so we'll get rid of Cavern. A little low on lands here, down to 27, but hopefully it will be of no consequence. We immediately see a hand with all threats. If we draw any 2 lands, we'll be able to Karn on 3 here. If we draw a bounce land, this hand becomes quite nice as well. If they discard our Amulet, we're in a little bit worse position, though. I don't know. This might be a mulligan, actually. Just turn 1 discard taking our Amulet is really bad for us. Although then, if we top deck bounce land exactly, we'll still be able to Karn. Maybe not on turn 3, though, because we don't have an untapped source. So Karn on turn 4. We need to draw several lands, one of them being a bounce land, most likely, if our Amulet got discarded. So I think this has to be a mulligan, sadly. Whew. How about the all lands Wormcoil hand, huh? On the draw. If we were on the play, I might be a little more tempted to keep this, but I don't think we can work with this. It's really good against discard spells that aren't Thoughtseize, but now we got a mulligan as well. Okay. Well, this hand's actually quite fantastic, not gonna lie. Even on 5 cards, this is pretty decent, I would say, so we'll keep for sure. And we gotta figure out what we're bottoming. I think Grazer's a pretty easy bottom. Actually, we could bottom the Explore here, since we don't have another land to put into play. We could draw another land in the next 2 draw steps, but the Grazer blocks. And it doesn't get Stubborn denied, so let's bottom the Explorer. And I suppose we're bottoming either Explosives or Pack. I think it's going to be Explosives, because our opponent could be on an Angler draw. So, it's better to have the Pact, I think. So we do see the turn one discard spell here. Alright, sorry, I am back. Our opponent discarding our Amulet here. Unfortunate, but not much we can do about it. So we'll play out the Ghost Quarter and pass. I had to take care of my doggo. He started making a bunch of noise, and usually I have the room door closed here so that he can't get in and start making barks and growlings that get picked up in the sound. But this time he was able to slip through, so. Our hand got significantly slower. The Dismember is actually a pretty welcome top deck here. If our opponent decides to deploy an early shadow, we'll be able to punish them for it. So we'll yield until they're in step. I'll be back. I gotta go get my computer charger now. I'm sorry, everyone. It's all devolving into a mess here. Murphy's Law, am I right? Somehow we're still ahead on clock compared to our opponent, so. Vesuva. Interesting. There's some argument to holding up Dismember here, but being able to potentially down the line Vesuva a Gruul Turf is just too much value. We need to make as much mana as quickly as possible, and Grazering in a Vesuva is one way to do that, so hopefully our opponent won't just go ham with a Shadow here and leave us without Dismember available to protect ourselves from that, but I think it's going to be more important that we get our lands in play here. Try to get our mana functioning, you know? We have a Grazer for a blocker as well, so our opponent really needs a threat here. Oh, they bobbled. Ah, interesting. Oh, this must be an Angler, but luckily for us, we can Dismember that thing. So, not getting punished for playing out the Gruul Turf here as opposed to Vesuva-ing something. I suppose if we had played the Vesuva as a copy of one of these lands, we could Dismember and Grazer still, and actually, I guess we wouldn't be able to Grazer. I don't know, never mind. I think it was correct to play out the Gruul Turf there, and in hindsight. We just draw another Gruul Turf, of course. So let's go ahead and Dismember this guy with our red. We'll play a Ghost Quarter, and we'll Grazer out a Gruul Turf. Gotta yield to this. We could Grazer out the Vesuva instead, but let's just go with the actual factual Gruul Turf, so that we have Vesuva as a way to copy some utility lands, such as Bojuka Bog or something like that, or even field it at really far down the line. Better to have it in hand than in play, I think. Vesuva being in play means that we have to have a bounce land to pick up the Vesuva before we can play it as a copy of anything, so I guess we don't necessarily want to yield here. If they cast an Inquisition, we want a Summoner's Pact in response, so that's why you see this little swirly here, is that means that I am trying to cancel the yield here. Of course, it makes you wait until the person who has priority takes an action to actually update the yields, but before it didn't used to have the little swirling loading symbol there anyways. It was one of the more recent Magic Online updates that I happen to like personally very much. So our opponent finally managed to get a shadow into play, it looks like. I have to assume that's the case. Okay. Another dismember would kill the shadow, which is quite interesting to think about. Second shadow. No. Stop. Not this way. Karn would be able to get us one of our engineered explosives and blow this up. Could always just top deck our engineered explosives as well. Castle Garenbrig. That one ain't bad. Yeah, I guess we're playing that and passing it back. We may need to get the Summoners Pact out before our opponent has a chance to Stubborn Denial for full value on our Summoners Pact. I think we're under enough pressure, though, that we're going to need to be able to play to pack for it and play a Titan the same turn we cast it. So I think we actually just have to fade a Stubborn Denial here. Discard spell and Stubborn Denial, I suppose. And they bobble us. Dismember. Excuse me? We're just dead here? Whoa. That is insane. Alright, alright. They got us. Good game, opponent. Well, ended up a 1-2 against Grixis Shadow. Another matchup that's not particularly great for Amulet, even with Grazers, apparently. So, that was interesting. Sorry for the interruptions in the middle. Hopefully there won't be much of an interruption for you guys. Of course, they were an interruption for me, but yeah, let me know what you think of the list. Let me know what you think of the match. Is there anything that I could have done differently here? Would you sideboard out the Karn the Great creators here, or would you keep them in? Let me know. Also, if you happen to have access to F. Policies or Pumpkin Wine's Karn Amulet sideboard guides, if those exist, let me know what they do. Does F. Policy sideboard out Karn against the Shadow decks and discard decks? I guess it would be mainly Grixis Shadow. Does he side out Karn against Grixis Shadow? And what about Punt? Or any other Amulet Master that you know of that has expressed their thoughts on this? What do you think? Anyways, I'm just about burnt out for the day, so I will see you guys for the next match. This is Redface Menace, signing off.